Welcome to another live Third Apron podcast. We are 1 week away from the trade deadline. I am Yossi Goslin, your host, salary cap analyst, host of Third Apron podcast as usual. My great co-host Sam Quinn. So yesterday we finally got what I'm going to interpret as a trade demand or trade request. I think that
Let's
even
call
though
it a
the
trade
wording,
suggestion. Remember, Chris Haynes did say that he didn't ask for a trade. I'm calling it a trade suggestion.
it's a trade demand, and in fact, the reporting even indicated that Giannis was essentially ready to do this. He made it clear that he was on his way, that he wanted to move on a while ago. But now the big difference is the Bucks are finally listening. It's a trade request, and it's just different verbiage without using the direct words, which is fine. I don't really have a problem with that. Sam, how are you doing right now?
I'm good. I'm ready for this to happen. I know logically it shouldn't happen now. This should happen in the offseason for reasons that we'll get into. But I'm glad that we finally have some movement on this. I mean, obviously, we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks that the deadline as a whole had been sort of paralyzed as teams waited for clarity on the Giannis front. I think we're going to play this out in the next few days. We'll find out if there's really momentum here or if the Bucks are kind of just getting ready to do this in the summer. But either way, like this deadline needed to grease the wheels a little bit. Now they have, and I think we're learning some interesting things, whether it happens now or over the summer. I think we're kind of getting a sense of what the market is going to look like, what teams are really in the mix. There are some surprises that we've heard thus far. So I'm glad that like we're actually doing this and it's not just, like speculation on our part or common sense or anything like that. Like, no, it seems like it's happening.
Yep. It was an inevitability that we're going to get to this point. Now the big question is if the Bucks get bowled over by an offer strong enough for them to move him now. We'll get into that. I think everyone this is one of those where for the most part I think everyone a week away from the trade deadline feels that that's unlikely. But Bucks accomplished two things here. Or it's one or the other. One, if you get the trade you want, you get all the things you need and you feel like the offers aren't going to get that much better later, then you get your deal done. Okay, everyone's happy. Otherwise, though, you are already starting to set the ball rolling for negotiations that go into the offseason. So there's probably going to be a handful of teams that submit their best offer, and then the Bucks can probably get a little bit more in the offseason when most of these teams can probably add a little bit more draft-wise, maybe help them Bucks save more money, stuff like that. Where do you think is the best place to start? We went extensively last time on basically the Knicks and Heat. We got two new teams. One team that everyone's always felt in the Warriors would have a shot eventually. And then the Wolves. Maybe we'll just start with them because that one really tickled your fancy, it seems.
Oh, yeah. We had a text argument this morning. First things first, we should probably lay this out. This might not move the Bucks, but I do think it's worth pointing out. Giannis needs to get traded during the season if he is going to sign a contract extension or at least a max contract extension next offseason, because his super max extension would go above the trade and extend max. So it would trigger a 6-month wait after a trade. If he gets traded now, he will be eligible to get extended in October before next season starts, which you want because that obviously protects you against some risk. If he gets traded in the offseason, that 6-month clock would then start in the middle of the offseason and therefore go into presumably December, January, whenever he ultimately got traded. I think he'd probably get his max either way. But like, what if he tore his ACL early next season? There's some risk there. So I suspect that Giannis is pushing for this to happen now. And my thought here is like, Giannis, buddy, I don't have much sympathy for you. If you would have done this last summer, this would all be done by now, but you didn't. So here we are. As far as where we should start today, I do want to start with some of the reporting that came out from Brian Windhorst and from Jake Fisher and Mark Stein. I think the most important bit of information that we learned today was that it doesn't seem like Giannis is as locked in on the Knicks as maybe we've been thinking leading up to, like, ever since whenever it was August, September, when we first learned about that. Wintour said like he's potentially interested in Minnesota. Fisher and Stein had Philly as a team that he was a little bit interested in. There was even a quote, I think it was in the Fisher and Stein newsletter, basically saying that like there has been some thought that Giannis is less interested in New York than he was over the summer. That doesn't rule the Knicks out, obviously. I think it means any notion that the Knicks are just going to get Giannis for a crappy offer where it's like, here's Karl Towns and our swaps in 30 and 32 and maybe Deuce McBride. I think that's off the table. If the Knicks are going to get him, they're going to have to actually like cut into their team properly. But Minnesota is the first team that I think has entered these sweepstakes that we didn't really expect. We talked about Golden State, we talked about New York, we talked about Miami various times over the past several months. We had never talked about Minnesota because we just sort of looked at their non-collection of draft picks and said they can't do it, right? They owe their next 3 of the next 6 first-round picks. They owe 2 to Utah, 1 to San Antonio. They owe 1 swap to San Antonio, and then they have 1 pick that's frozen because they were in the second apron last year. So all they can do draft-wise, that's aside from like a secondary swap with San Antonio in 30, would be an unprotected swap in 2028. But a team that has Giannis and Anthony Edwards probably wouldn't be swapping you a very good pick. So their draft assets are minimal, but they actually have a pretty strong offer to make as far as player value goes. It would just have to be 3, 4, 5 teams. Because while they don't have that much that I think Milwaukee would want, Milwaukee might want Dillingham, Milwaukee might want Shannon, Milwaukee might want Berenger, fine. They have a lot of stuff that other teams would want. Starting with Jaden McDaniels, who I think has more trade value than either OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges if the Knicks have to go shopping for picks with those guys, because he's 3 years younger than Anunoby, 4 years younger than Bridges, and he's significantly cheaper than either of them. He's going to make $50 million less over the next 3 years than OG Anunoby is. So I think a lot of teams that might not have been interested in Anunoby or in Bridges might be interested in Jaden McDaniels, and you might be able to go to, say, a Charlotte or a Utah and say, can you give us several first-round picks for McDaniels to be a core piece for you that we can then send to Milwaukee? If that's the case, you might have something here. After that, you'd probably have to ship Randall somewhere, or ship Gobert somewhere, ship Naz Reid somewhere, ship DiVincenzo somewhere. Like a couple of those guys, you probably have to send out to get picks. But I think this is a workable construction because if you look at the Knicks, they have 2, maybe 3 guys, maybe 4 guys, I guess, with McBride that other teams might want. Minnesota has guys at every position that other teams might want. If the imperative here is trade your veterans for picks and send those picks to Milwaukee, I think Minnesota might have an easier time doing that than the Knicks would. So I think Minnesota is really in this. I don't know if you agree, so I'll give you a chance to push back here.
No, I agree with these valuations you're saying and the logic that if I think that the Knicks have a legitimate shot at putting together a package for Giannis, then I think you got to feel equally about the Wolves' chance of doing it. If Giannis does have the Wolves as a preference, and yeah, it's been a while now since the Knicks were supposedly his only preference, so things could have changed. And when we talked about the Giannis his first trade demand or whatever it was back then, we both agreed that he's going to have to open up his preferences eventually if he's going to actually get moved sooner. So now it seems like he's actually doing it. If the Wolves are a legitimate spot, then I think they have just as much a chance of the Knicks of putting together equal type of value. You mentioned Jaden McDaniels, for example. I was on SNY earlier this week, I was on SNY, but I was also on Knicks Fan TV, and there I talked about the trade I suggested. You had the Mikal Bridges variation to Portland, and I had the OG Anunoby one variation to Portland, and a lot of Knicks fans wanted my head for saying that. And I just feel like OG, I know he's so much better. If you're the Knicks, you could keep him. I don't know how the Knicks get a deal done without trading him, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So now you look at the Wolves, if they're actually in play, and which to me means that, and you as well, that Jaden McDaniels is in play. Now the Wolves probably have the better offer unless the Knicks are willing to put up OG Anunoby. I feel like they kind of have similar value. You made a great case on Twitter today of how Jaden McDaniels, mainly because his contract and he's a little younger, that he probably has a little bit more value. Yes, I would agree with that. But for the most part, like they're kind of similar, but given their player type, how well they could plug into any team. So then it's all about finding the rest of the value, which means kind of like the Knicks would be doing, sending Towns here, sending a player there. The Wolves were probably going to have to deconstruct most of their team because if you're trading Jalen, you're already going to trade Jaden McDaniels. You're going to have to trade Randall because I don't think there's really it makes sense to have Randall and Giannis. And then
I have a trade lined up there, by the way, if you want to go into that.
And you're probably going to have to trade Gobert because I also don't think that's a great fit. So you're going to pretty much deconstruct the entire front court. You probably keep Naz Reid. They could work together for good amounts of stretches of time. And you're getting value for those guys to reroute to the Bucks. It's going to be tough for them to also bring back some front court players to replace them that they're sending out. But I think there is a way where they can get value. Now, I don't think Randall, Gobert, they have like so much immense trade value. I don't think it's like multiple firsts worth of value, but neither does Karl Anthony Towns have a lot of value. So it seems like a kind of too quick thing for the Wolves to now get involved like this. Now, I forgot who reported it. Someone was reporting that the Wolves did make an offer. So maybe they have been prepping for this. But to me, it seems like for the Wolves and to an extent the Knicks might be more of an off-season thing when they each have an extra pick to trade, and it'll just be so much easier to completely reshape their starting lineup because both these teams are going to have like significantly different starting lineups, and that's harder to just do in the middle of the season.
Okay, I've got some stuff to pitch you. It's going to be kind of a piece-by-piece thing, just elements of this that I think could make sense. Number one, do you think Milwaukee would rather have Myles Turner or Naz Reid?
I think they'd rather have Naz Reid. I think
that could be one component
for the direction that they're going to be heading post Giannis. Naz Reid makes a little more sense. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's not necessarily a guy they need to build around, but he makes a little more sense going forward than Myles Turner.
So that's a little bit of a value nudge. And I don't think Minnesota, in fact, I think Minnesota might rather have Turner in this world than Naz Reid because they'd want to have a defensive, like somebody who can protect the rim if they're trading Rudy Gobert elsewhere. Question number two, would Portland do something centered around Julius Randle for Drew Holiday?
Portland, you said?
Yes. The reason I bring this up, you don't think that I'm not talking about picks. I am saying Julius Randle for Drew Holiday.
My instinct is no. And we'll get more into the Drew Holiday stuff in a bit, but I would think no. I don't think Portland does. I think Portland really value Drew Holiday, it seems. I mean, we might as well get into it now. I don't really understand where on one hand, the Blazers are already going to be asked to help out in a hypothetical Giannis trade, give the Bucks back their picks, and then in exchange they get some starter back. I'm not sure how it also fits into the equation that they're also setting out Drew Holiday. So I understand where you're going with this, where, okay, would they want a player like Randall? Not necessarily Randall. Maybe there is a player they could bring back. I think Portland just wants to keep him. They traded him because they really like him. They wanted him to keep him since they originally traded Dame. And they just have no other point guards right now. Now, finally, we have an update that Scoot could be back kind of soon. He's doing some contact. It just seems like they would not trade him, and I don't think they would trade him for that.
I think that's a fair position. I just think Holiday being 6 years older than Randall and Portland needing shot creation as much as they do, I wonder if Randall being like a borderline all-star level offensive player might be enough to move them and say like, wow, like we could have arbitraged our way from Anthony Simons up to Julius Randle. That's kind of interesting. Like, again, I'm open to the idea they wouldn't do that. But the basic idea that I had was basically, if you're Minnesota, you use Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and Dante DiVincenzo to generate draft value. You trade those guys to three separate teams. We could go through who might be interested in those guys, but you trade them to three separate teams for a boatload of picks. Then you trade Naz Reid for Myles Turner in the deal to replace Rudy Gobert's rim protection. And then you trade Julius Randle for wing defense somewhere else to replace Jaden McDaniels. You'd totally be changing your team, but I do think there is a way that this could align, whether it's Drew Holiday or somebody else. I think Julius Randle probably wouldn't get like a huge picks package, but I think if other teams could look at this and say, like, we could get Julius Randle on a pretty team friendly contract. We have to give up some wings, some defense to do that. I think that might be doable. And this would be a way for Minnesota to get the Ant Giannis duo, but also like get some of the role players that they needed. In other words, I think there's like, as far as a clean path to trading away like 5 of your 6 best players goes, this could be done, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. This trader you're talking about, did you post it on Twitter earlier today, or trying to see if there's anything we could reference it to?
I posted an idea on Twitter. I think it probably needs to be refined, but my basic concept was that you trade Jaden McDaniels to Charlotte. Do you think Charlotte would give up 3 first-round picks for McDaniels? Because I think that's feasible.
I could see them doing something like that. They have like 11 first-round picks. I could see them wanting to trade those amounts, that amount for him.
Yeah, I think you'd have some talk about which picks those would be. Like they have a bad pick from Phoenix from the Mark Williams trade that maybe that would be. They have good picks like Dallas next year, their own pick this year. You'd have to mix and match which picks it would be. But like the way I view Jaden McDaniels is like, I think he probably has more value than Herb Jones and less value than Trey Murphy, right? Like he's not getting a Desmond Bane package, but he's not like super far away from that. If you're Charlotte or if you're Utah's in the same boat, and you have all of this offensive talent moving forward and just no perimeter defense whatsoever, I think that giving up 3 picks for McDaniels is a potentially worthwhile trade. So that would be kind of the way you get most of the pick value for Milwaukee.
And I'll just add to that. You mentioned Charlotte, who I haven't even looked at the teams that could facilitate for Jaden McDaniels. I haven't had the time to really get into that, but like you brought up Charlotte, and I can't really see them. Like maybe I could see them facilitating for Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, but like that idea, them facilitating for Jaden McDaniels, I think that makes a lot more sense than either of those guys. So that's just another wrinkle to what could give Minnesota a little bit of an edge over the Knicks if they're really in play. Is I think they'll have more teams potentially in play for McDaniels, and that could help reroute more picks to the Bucks.
So the other guy that I put in that deal was Rudy Gobert. I sent Rudy Gobert to Boston for Sam Hauser, Anthony Simons, the 2026 first round pick, and New Orleans' second round pick, which is going to be like 32, 33, whatever. Like, does that seem like a ballpark reasonable idea for Rudy Gobert?
I think for that value, that's good for Boston. The issue is just the money. Do they want to punt on saving on getting getting away from the repeater tax to get a player like Gobert? And is he worth doing that and then try to figure it out later once you do have these tax issues? I don't know. I think the value's fine. I just figure Boston, their situation in particular, they may prefer to go after a mid-level-ish, $20-ish million guy, a Zubats, a Onyeka Okongwu, one of those types of guys. But the value, that's great for the Celtics. But generally speaking, the way like what you're framing, I think it all works. I just feel like it might just have to be in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've talked a lot about Boston ducking the repeater tax. I think now with this indication that Jason Tatum might not return this year after all, that might be a pathway for Boston to do this and just kind of like do it quietly, not have an uproar, make that trade with Utah that we talked about with Simons and Nurkic and picks or whatever. Like they could potentially duck the tax this year. Fine. Rudy Gobert, like if Wembanyama doesn't play 65 games, Rudy Gobert might win Defensive Player of the Year. He's been that good. Like, this
Yep.
is not a mid-level center in terms of quality. Rudy Gobert this year has been, I think, an all-star caliber player. He won't make the all-star team because the West is so crowded. But like, he could help somebody like win the championship this year or next. If Boston is okay with those giant repeater tax bills, I don't know if they are or they aren't, but if they are, like, Rudy Gobert on that team would be spectacular. So whether it's Boston, like Indiana might have similar questions. I think their playing style might not be as conducive to Rudy, but like, I think there would be like 1.5 firsts out there for Rudy if Minnesota searched. I don't know who it would be from. Julius Randle is harder to figure out. Chicago is a team I would throw out for Julius Randle. There'd been all that talk about them like looking for their Pascal Siakam. And it's funny, every time we bring this up, we bring up a guy who doesn't really defend that much. Like we talked about Zion. I've talked about Karl Towns as that guy for them. There aren't that many Pascal Siakams, right? Like Indiana getting Pascal Siakam was kind of a black swan event. Guys like that don't become available at that price that often.
I
So
mean, the
maybe
Bulls have been
Chicago
kind of
would be
linked to
interested in
Zion.
Julius Randle.
The Bulls have been kind of linked to Zion. He's not, he's kind of like
Kind
a
of
step
loosely.
below that tier.
Yeah. But like the basic idea would be like, I think Chicago, you can link to a lot of these offense first, power forward center types. Something to keep in mind. I think 1.5 first round picks for Julius Randle's out there. And DiVincenzo is so cheap. I think you could find a first round pick for DiVincenzo easily. Like, I think Houston would 100% give up a first round pick for DiVincenzo because they need shooting that badly. I have another Houston suggestion I want to bring up later. The Lakers have been linked to DiVincenzo. The Knicks, ironically, have been linked to DiVincenzo, although they don't have a first to trade. I don't think you'd have any problem getting a first for DiVincenzo.
So
So, like,
I,
if you're getting 2 or 3 firsts for McDaniels,
oh, and we have like a lag. I had to stop one of the other streams, so it's kind of
yeah,
strange. But anyway, finish your
yes,
point.
I
Sorry.
DM'd you. My point is, if you can get 2 or 3 firsts for McDaniels, I bet between Rudy, DiVincenzo, and Randall, you could scrounge together another 2 or 3 firsts between those guys. And now you're talking about a draft package that would be acceptable to Minnesota. And I think Nas for Myles Turner, while not like some major value add for Milwaukee, I think they'd probably rather have Nas anyway, and Minnesota would rather have Turner. Those guys just make more sense on the other teams. So I do think there is a pretty plausible path here. It might involve really drastically changing your roster, and maybe you can't like maybe you need to make changes in the offseason and you're not as suited to win the title this year. But I think the combination of Anthony Edwards and Giannis would be so overwhelming, and they're an easier fit than Dame and Giannis were because Ant is the point guard. He doesn't have to have the ball in every possession to be effective. He's obviously a much better defender than Lillard was. Like, I think that duo would be so good together. I would just drop everything, figure out how to get it, and then figure out the rest of the roster later.
So you think they need to trade all of Rudy, Julius, McDaniels, potentially Reed and Dante to meet the value of Giannis and rearrange the roster?
I don't know if they have to trade all 5 of those guys. Like, I think they have to trade McDaniels. I think they have to trade 2 of the 3 of Dante, Rudy, and Randall. And Rudy and Randall don't fit on the team anyway, so you might want to trade them anyway. Nas, you don't have to necessarily trade, but I'm saying Turner makes more sense on the new version of the team anyway. So I would only put Nas in there if I was swapping him for Turner because Milwaukee might want Nas more and Turner might make more sense for Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm saying trade 4, get 2 back.
Okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. Either way, I think you're right, though. Like, maybe they don't have to trade all 4 of these guys to get the value to Milwaukee. I don't think, as far as the value, you mostly probably get there with McDaniels and whatever you can get for Gobert. I just want to add to the Gobert part. Yeah, I think it's between him and Chet right now for Defensive Player of the Year. And with Rudy, his just like the highest peak of his defensive impact could kind of yo-yo from season to season. Even though last season he wasn't really in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year, he still had that level of impact. But especially now, the Wolves could be kind of on a clock if they do want to do something with Rudy. This could be maybe the last chance they get to really get some positive value, whether that's 2 maybe good first round picks and that use that towards getting a player like Giannis. And it doesn't necessarily need to be at the trade deadline, but let's say you can get like 5 first round picks or even 6 first round picks worth of value for McDaniels and Gobert alone. That might be enough to satisfy the Bucks in the end. Plus, the Wolves will have their 2033. Maybe there's Dillingham and Berenger, depending how the Bucks feel about them. I think they can make the value happen for sure between those 3 to 4 pieces. But as I say, maybe this offseason might be the last time they can capitalize on Rudy.
We've both talked about the idea that they drafted Berenger as a long-term Rudy replacement. And Rudy might just be like, look, if you think you can win the title this year and you're not making a Giannis trade, yes, keep Rudy because he's so good right now that he will help you compete in the 2026 playoffs. If you're trading for Giannis, he doesn't really make sense. Or if you think we can't win the title in 26 or 27, it might make sense to trade him, recoup some asset value, start playing Berenger more, and then have assets to trade to get better in 27, 28, 29, etc. Like you might look at this Ant situation and say like, maybe our best window with him is like 2 years down the line because McDaniels and Reed will still be in their prime. Randall will still be reasonably close. Still have DiVincenzo. Like maybe this isn't the year, basically. So I do think it's worth just looking around and seeing what the offer would be from Rudy for a team that's more interested in like, we're trying to win right now. I think that market would exist. I don't know that Rudy and McDaniels alone gets it done, but I think if you put DiVincenzo in there, that certainly gets you where you need to go.
Yeah. Anything else on the Wolves, or do you want to move on to, I guess, the Warriors?
I'm trying to think. Oh, I mean, worth mentioning, Dillingham, Shannon, Berenger. The Knicks don't really have guys in that vein who were recent first-round picks. Deuce McBride is very valuable and having a very good year. I think the Knicks, being as thin as they are, would have a really hard time giving him up because they need him for their Giannis team. They don't really have, I guess Tyler Kolek maybe would have some value in that way, but like I think Minnesota also has better sweeteners than the Knicks do.
Yeah. Well, you're saying if the Knicks have to trade Deuce, the issue that can add to their rotation?
Yeah, like they need Deuce to play on their team.
Yeah.
Right? Like especially if they're giving up multiple core players.
That might be what the Alvarado, maybe that could be related to Alvarado. We've been seeing a lot of Jose Alvarado to the Knicks news for a while. I think ideally they want to have both of them, but in the event they do need to trade McBride, getting Alvarado then makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think they function somewhat differently, but you need just whatever depth you can get if you're trading Deuce, if you're trading multiple other key players. Should we just dovetail into the Knicks now since we've been talking about them this much?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is my contention. Knicks fans have lost their mind at you for saying they might need to trade OG. I'm taking this a step further. I don't think there's a path unless they're trading OG and Bridges. Now, it's fair to say maybe they shouldn't do that. I'm not sitting here and saying like, oh, you're an idiot if you even like get a little nervous about that. Like that's a real price. You're changing your team very, very drastically if you do that. Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't seem to have positive trade value. Like it doesn't seem like there's a team out there that wants to give up a first or 2 firsts or a first and a good young player for Karl-Anthony Towns. And Milwaukee doesn't seem like they would want him either. Like there's this idea that, oh, we have to have somebody to put on a billboard. We have to have somebody to sell tickets to be our franchise guy after Giannis. There has been no reporting whatsoever that they're thinking that way. It feels like it's just a dig at their market. Like, oh, in Milwaukee, you have to have a famous guy. I don't think that's really true. I think they really are thinking just about how can we get as many picks and young guys as possible. If Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't have value to Milwaukee, then you need to trade 2 guys to generate the value that they would need, which to me means you'd have to trade both OG and Bridges. So I'll bring this to you. Number one, if they traded OG and Bridges, Number one, do you think that's enough? Number two, who are the teams for those guys? And number three, should the Knicks do that?
I think that that would be enough. And no, I would not do that. It already took me a while to get around the possibility that the Knicks would have to trade one of these guys to meet the value in a Giannis trade, and then it took me a little longer to get to that. I think it's gonna have to be OG. Yeah, if the Knicks have to trade both, they're gonna need to be able to get some. I don't know how they're gonna replace him, but I think the value in having OG and Mikal, two of the premier sub all-star high end wings. I don't know if replacing both of them to get Giannis is. I don't think that's really worth it. I think I'd rather stick with what I've got and then just see what I could do later. If that means you have to trade Karl Anthony Towns because you no longer think he's going to be a part of the winning formula and do something a little different, I'd rather just do that. Yeah, I especially this after with the sunk cost of what they gave up to get both guys, I would rather hold on to at least one of them. No way I would trade both.
That's fine. That's a reasonable position. I just don't think you're getting Giannis with only one of them. I don't think those guys have the sort of like. It's not like you can just go and say, "Hey, we traded 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, so if we trade him, surely we're going to get 5 back." Like, no, that ship has sailed. It's a sunk cost. I don't think one of those guys has enough value to get you Giannis, even with McBride, even with swaps in 30 and 32. I think when push comes to shove, the question for the Knicks is, are you willing to trade both Bridges and Anunoby? If the answer is yes, you have a real chance at Giannis. If the answer is no, I think you're going to get outbid. And some of these teams we're going to talk about a little later, I think just have more to offer than one of those wings plus Towns, because I don't think Towns has much trade value. That being said, I'm not totally out on the idea of trading both wings. Just think about what the roster would be if they did. You'd lose all that perimeter defense. Fine, I'm not disputing that. If you had Jalen Brunson, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Karl Anthony Towns, you would have the best offense in the NBA by a mile, right? Like, you'd still have some defense too. You'd still have Josh Hart. You'd still have Deuce McBride. Giannis won Defensive Player of the Year. He's not exactly a slouch. You'd still have Mitchell Robinson, which means, like, aside from having the Giannis Cat combination, you could go to your bench and say, we're also going to have this awesome offensive rebounding version of the team. You could play lineups with Giannis and Mitch together that would probably be very good defensively. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm 100% in. I am saying that's not a bad team. Like, I don't know. That's a pretty interesting group of players.
I just think it's a little too much. They'd have to find some good alternatives.
Then you're not getting Giannis.
Yeah. Like, you can, like, let's say hypothetically, you could somehow get back as part of a bigger trade Jeremy Grant and like Najee Marshall. I'm just spitballing names. I don't know. Like, would you be satisfied with those being the wings you're surrounding Giannis with the rest of the roster?
I mean, no, but what I'm going to say is there's not a trade that creates a perfect version of the Knicks. I'm sorry. Like, this notion that the Knicks can just get Giannis and win the championship super easily, that's not how it's going to go. Either you're going to move forward with the team you have right now, which we know it's flaws because we watched them in the playoffs last year and we've watched them play this year, or you're going to trade for Giannis and you're going to fix some of your problems, but you're going to create different ones and you're going to be flawed in other ways. Right? Like, it's up to the Knicks to decide which flaws are you comfortable dealing with, because I don't think you're just getting him for Towns and Bridges. I just don't think that's enough. I think it would have to be Bridges and Anunoby. And, like, maybe you could figure out the rest of the roster. I don't know. But I don't know that I would totally shut the door on that. I just don't think there's enough value in this otherwise. So that's kind of where I'm at. You could maybe figure it out. Like, what if there was a version of this where you traded Bridges, Anunoby, and Hart, and you got Giannis and Drew, hypothetically? Like, does that move the needle for you?
That's different. but I just don't know why the Blazers want
Yeah.
to potentially like trade picks for a wing and then also trade Holiday. Like that's different. If you can replace them with a player like Holiday, so you have Brunson, Holiday, random wing, Giannis, and maybe you keep Towns, but probably Mitchell Robinson there. Okay, I could get a little more behind that, but I just don't exactly see like it. I guess if the trade is you're trading Mikal and OG for Giannis and Drew Holiday, plus you're sending picks, whatever picks you have in the offseason, maybe. I don't know. I just really love the wings that they've got.
Sure. I mean, again, you're just not getting Giannis for
Yeah.
scraps. Like I think
Well,
that ship has sailed.
so let's discuss then what the best offer what everyone seems to agree. I'll just ask you straight up. Do you think the Warriors kitchen sink offer of their 4 firsts, Kuminga, Butler, and then I guess Pajemski, do you think the Knicks have to trade both wings to top that offer?
Yes, I think so. I don't think the Warriors have the best offer. We'll get to who I think has the best offer. But yeah, I think to top all of those Golden State picks, plus I think Kuminga has more upside in Golden State or in Milwaukee than does in Golden State. Plus, the thing you haven't mentioned, but I think bears mentioning here, Golden State could also trade Draymond, and I think they could get value for Draymond. And if they did that, say you sent out Jimmy, Kuminga, and Draymond, you could take like another 40 million back, and that opens up some really interesting possibilities where like could you do something where you hypothetically sent out all 3 of those guys and then went to Sacramento and said, we'll take Zach LaVine into our new $40 million cap slot or whatever it is. Like, I think that opens up a lot of doors, something worth considering. I think to beat Golden State, you have to give up both wings. Should we talk about who the teams are for OG and Bridges? Because I think it's a shorter list than people think because of how big the contracts are. For what it's worth, I don't think Portland is very eager to give up all of those Bucks picks for Anunoby or Bridges. I think you'd have to look for other teams. And I'm not sure who those teams are because the win now teams that would really want Anunoby and Bridges, the teams that could really use a 3-and-D wing like those guys, most of them have already traded their picks. So I'm not sure who the teams for those guys would be.
Okay, let's go through them because when you brought up McDaniels, I agree. I think there'll be a bigger pool of teams for him. So what do you think about some of these like rebuilding teams that are about to maybe start being more competitive, like the Wizards and Jazz? You met like in the same vein as the Hornets. Do you think any of them make sense for either of those guys?
I think if any of those teams had their pick, they would take McDaniels. And I would have a hard time envisioning a scenario where, like, I guess if Minnesota falls out and says, we're not doing this, then maybe you consider it. But even that, like, Anunoby has some durability issues. Bridges is 29. I don't know. If I were those teams, I'd probably, like, hold my picks and either use them or wait to trade for somebody that fits the timeline a little bit better. I think you're probably looking at win now teams. Can I throw out one team that I actually do think might make some sense for one of these guys?
Sure.
What about San Antonio? Like in the Harrison Barnes slot, and they have Kelly Olynyk and Jeremy Sohan for extra matching salary if they need it. Like, what if San Antonio offered Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, Kelly Olynyk, plus 3 first-round picks, and we'll figure out what those picks are for Anunoby? Like, would that set up the Spurs as like maybe even the Western Conference favorites this year?
I do think that is the big hole in their lineup, a strong physical defensive wing who could also score. I think the Spurs would probably consider offering that for Anunoby, 3 firsts for him. They can trade up to 4 right now. I love the idea conceptually. You might not even need to trade Harrison Barnes. I think they'd even want to try to keep him to be a backup. So
well, how are you matching the salary?
I think you could get there with Olynyk, Keldon Johnson for the most part, and then Sohan. I think that's
Keldon Johnson's been really good this year. I am not eager to trade him.
I hear you. I think they really value Barnes's leadership, veteranosity, all that kind of thing. where I think they might try to keep Harrison Barnes to be if they had to choose. But either way,
Okay.
I don't think that's really it's irrelevant to
If
this.
Keldon Johnson's in the trade, it's 2 firsts. It's not 3.
I don't know. Is Keldon Johnson worth? I don't know if Keldon Johnson's
He
worth the
might win
first. He's
6th
been
man
good.
of the year. Keldon Johnson's having a really good year. They can be good first, but like I want like if I'm giving up 3, Keldon Johnson's worth a first to San Antonio. He's been that important in this year's team. He's also another guy who's really important in that locker room.
Like we've been talking about how we don't think the Mavs can get a first for Najee Marshall. I think he's better and on a better contract. I can't see Johnson going for a first. It'd be a very low first.
Okay, let me try this.
Yeah.
What about Devin Vassell in 2 firsts? Is that too much? It might have to be Devin Vassell in 1 first.
That's interesting. And I could see in reality, maybe that's kind of where it goes, where the Bucks or another team involved perhaps wants Vassell more than the extra Spurs pick. Because as you look at the Spurs pick, there's like 3 that jump out.
2031 Kings. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one I have to have.
Yeah. That is the one. But like any of the ones that have swaps on them, those have a lot of value. Those have a lot of variability. Even if the teams are kind of good, like the Celtics or the Wolves in the future, even just any of those, anything can happen. So that's I really like that spot. More realistic target for the Spurs than some of the max guys that have been out there, whether that's Giannis or Lauri Markkanen. None of those, like Lauri Markkanen and the Jazz aren't going to take that. I don't think they'd be interested in that sort of package the Spurs want to offer. But in the framework of getting Giannis to the Knicks or the Wolves or whoever, I think that makes, I guess the Knicks. Yeah, I think OG makes a lot of sense for the Spurs.
I have one more OG team or Bridges. I think either of them could work, which would be the Bulls, like especially OG because they wanted Pascal Siakam. Well, now you get the younger guy from that same Raptors team. They so badly need somebody to anchor their defense. I don't know. I think I don't know if Chicago, it's in their organizational character to give up several first-round picks for a vet. But, well, they did it for Vucevic, so maybe they would. I don't know. Like, I think Chicago for Anunoby would make a lot of sense if they really do want to, like, take a step forward and not be a 9 seed every year. Although, honestly, I think they still probably would be a 9 seed every year.
Yeah, that trade was crazy. I think that might be like under the Luka trade, the most unexpected trade deadline trade in the past 5-6 years. Like there was no reporting that the Bulls were even in the mix for Vooch. So you don't know with the Bulls. I've said time and time again, they are the most unexpected team to predict. We really don't know what they're thinking. So it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to trade 2 firsts, maybe 2.5 when you consider that Blazers first, because no matter what pick they're trading, chances are it's going to be pretty good. And I feel like they're aware of that. I'm sure they were aware of that when they did the Vooch trade because they top 4 protected both the picks they traded out. So I could see it. It's not crazy.
I have one more that I know we've argued about this team in the past. Joel Embiid is playing so well now that Philly might look at this weak East and say, like, I looked at them win too. The East. What if we did Paul George? And by the way, Paul George is kind of perfect for Milwaukee because they could put him on billboards, but he's not representing value here. If you're the Bucks, you're saying like, no, we want value for taking Paul George. And Philly would give up the 2 Clippers picks that they have, which are very, very valuable, plus maybe one of their own. And if you're Philly, you could roll out Maxey, VJ, Grimes, Anunoby, and Embiid. You might win the East. Go for it, guys.
It's worth noting the Sixers probably could have had OG Anunoby in the 2024 offseason if they really wanted to. I mean, partly probably not because the Knicks
anteed up. They gave the contract.
There's a CAA connection. Leon Rose's son repped OG, so it was probably unlikely. But the Sixers probably it would have been a better choice. I think I'd rather have paid OG even a little more than what he's making with the Knicks because it is a lot of money, $42.5 million a year for OG. But I think I'd rather have paid him like $45 a year than maxing out Paul George. And you're getting them just like a little less than Paul George. But anyways, I just really like the idea of him on the Sixers. I like the idea of him there more than them bringing Paul George at the time when during 2024 free agency, especially now that they have Edgecombe. I like it a lot more now. That would really solidify their 1 through 3. He could also play, well, maybe OG ends up being the 4 because they just always have a massive hole at the 4, but that's fine. But are they going to trade the Clippers pick? That's ultimately where it comes down to.
I'll put it this way. We wouldn't do that, but Daryl might, because Daryl Morey is as aggressive as general managers come. He might be willing to do that. Plus, there is a fringe benefit, which is that Paul George makes more than OG Anunoby does. Those savings, however much it is, it's like 7-8 million, right?
Yeah, that gets him under the tax.
Well, that gets them under the tax, but it also clears out money to re-sign Quentin Grimes in the offseason if you need it. So there are a lot of benefits to that aside from just the basketball of it all. I'm kind of talking myself into Philly. So you know what? There are teams out there that I think Anunoby makes sense for, less Bridges. So I'm feeling a little bit less confident, less bullish on the McDaniels versus OG and Bridges thing. I think it's probably a little bit cleaner for McDaniels because a lot of these teams that we covered for Anunoby would make sense for McDaniels as well. But I think if the Knicks shopped Anunoby, they probably would find a pretty strong offer out there. So we did land there. But now, anyway, we've done the Anunoby Bridges thing. Let's go on to Golden State.
Okay, so with the Warriors, the ESPN seems to, I don't know what the word is, but it seems to indicate that the Warriors are willing to trade all their first round picks, Kuminga, obviously Jimmy Butler for the salary matching, and then maybe even some of their other recent rookie scale guys like Brandon Pajemski for Giannis. That's a really strong offer. When I did my Warriors trade deadline preview last month, I said, I think those 4 firsts already put the Warriors at the top. And now it's starting to come around that, yeah, people seem to agree that's the case. So if the Warriors are willing to do this, I feel like a deal should get done at the trade deadline. And the only reason it wouldn't would be either because Giannis maybe isn't ready to commit to an extension with the Warriors. I would say that if there's a franchise that could feasibly maybe take the risk on trading for him anyways, and then betting on him liking it enough that he would extend in the offseason, the Warriors are up there. The only other reason I would say it doesn't happen is that the Bucks feel like they could somehow get a little bit more, not necessarily from the Warriors, but from a different team, because the Knicks, the Wolves, the Heat, they can all, again, have more access to more draft picks by waiting into the offseason. But I don't think really any of these teams get a better offer than the Warriors. The Warriors' offer doesn't really get better. They actually have.
Well, hang on.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. They actually do.
33 pick though.
Well, here's the thing. If the Warriors would actually have fewer picks to trade in the offseason. I mean, they don't have more. They'd have the same amount. So they could do the same thing, the even numbered years. So the 26, assuming they didn't trade it already, the offer doesn't get better. And if they want to take that 2033, then the Bucks actually have to take one fewer pick because of the Stepien rule. So that's a little bit of a complication.
Oh, they'd have to get Washington's help, but that seems doable, right?
Well, basically, they have to choose between 32 or 33. That's all it'd be. They still get four firsts.
Right, but what I'm saying is, say you did this in the offseason, even if you don't get 32 and 33, you can just do swaps on one of them, right? You're getting control of the pick. That's what matters. So here's my question. If you're Golden State, would you rather do this now or do it in the offseason? Because if you do it now, you get Giannis for the 2026 postseason. But if you do it next summer, well, actually, no, I've talked myself into a pretzel here. Golden State would much rather do it now because you both get Giannis for the 2026 postseason and you preserve your 2020 or 2033 pick. So Golden State would obviously much rather do this. Now, something to keep in mind that we haven't talked about, and there's nothing we can really say about it, but I just think it's a point worth having out there. We don't know what promises were made to Giannis when he extended in 2033. It is possible that he has some reason to believe if he wants to get traded at the deadline now, he can make that happen, even if it's not necessarily like the perfect trade for Golden State or for Milwaukee. Like maybe the Bucks did give him a promise that we will trade you when you want to get traded, and that's why the whole not asking for a trade thing was such a big deal. So like in that case, maybe this gets done without the 33 pick because this is what Giannis wants, and that's just something to have out there. The other thing we should talk about, I brought this up a little bit earlier. Say you trade Jimmy for Giannis, and Kuminga is in the deal, and Podziemski is in the deal, and maybe some other young guys or small salaries in the deal. Golden State would be able to take a fair amount of salary back, and we assume Kyle Kuzma would be that guy. And I think Steve Kerr would like Kyle Kuzma. I think he had him with Team USA one summer, like maybe it was the World Cup. I can't remember for sure. Maybe Kyle Kuzma could be that guy. I did bring this up earlier. The bigger that empty salary slot gets, the more creative you can get with what you do with it. And I wonder if you could get it big enough that you could take in Zach LaVine, where like, just again, hypothetical, I'm just talking here. Say you're the Warriors and you send Jimmy and Kuminga to the Bucks, and then you send Moody, Hield, and Horford to the Kings, and you take in Giannis and Zach LaVine, and you had a core of Steph, LaVine, Draymond, and Giannis. That's pretty sick, right?
Off the top of my head, I don't know if the money works. I don't know if they could backfill the roster.
I'm going to go to the trade machine. Just talk.
I did not think that's where you were going to go with this. I thought you were going to go with maybe they could get Myles Turner, because most likely the Bucks are going to want the Myles Turner trade to be separate from the Giannis one. But as I look at the valuation, I think some context is necessary when thinking about just how much Giannis is worth, because you can compare him to all these other times in history. Well, KD in his, 15th, 16th year went for 4 first-round picks. Well, yeah, but the Nets got also very lucky that the owner who really wanted to do it took over right in time to do the trade, and the Suns had all their picks and all these other awesome players, Mikal Bridges, so on. You can look at Damian Lillard. Same thing. He and KD had a lot of time left on their contracts. Giannis, he's got 1 year left on his contract, so I'm not saying it's going to be like a Kawhi situation. He's not going to go for that little. But I do think that we got to kind of lower our expectations when comparing to some of these other historic trade hauls, because I just don't think, one, the market's there with the lack of money flexibility to make it work, with the lack of draft picks available. Teams have traded all their draft picks in the past years for Kevin Durant, for Rudy Gobert, for Mikal Bridges, and so on. And Giannis is a little older. Yeah, he's in his 14th year. So with that said, I kind of feel like the Warriors trading everything that they've got that we've mentioned for Giannis, I feel like they should also, that's enough value where they should also be able to conceivably get Myles Turner back. That's my opinion. But very likely they won't really have the leverage to pull that off, because they're getting Giannis, and the Bucks are going to want to try to extract as much value for Myles Turner in an individual trade. But just my opinion, I feel like the value is fair enough for both Giannis and Myles Turner.
Yossi, I have a legal trade, and I am very, very excited about this.
Okay.
The Bucks get all of the Golden State picks, 26, 28, 30, and 32. They get Jimmy, they get Kuminga, and they get Podziemski. The Warriors get Giannis, Zach LaVine, Keon Ellis, and Russell Westbrook. Just whichever minimum you want. I just think Russell Westbrook is the funniest. And the Kings get Kuzma, Moody, Hield, Horford, and a 2031 swap from the Warriors.
And that's even money for the Warriors?
Warriors save $569,000.
But how many players are they sending out? One,
They send
two,
out 6
three,
players and they bring in
4.
4.
That's the tricky part.
Okay, well I have a
Yeah.
workaround. Calm
but
down.
but you're
Calm down.
close. You're close. You're close.
Yeah, we take out the second Kings minimum, so I guess Westbrook, and then they have enough money to just sign prorated minimums. Let me just make sure the Kings have the money to make this work. Yeah, that still
Yeah.
works if you take out. So this would leave the Warriors with 11 rosters or 11 roster spots filled, but 3.5 million in second apron space. So like, I'm just saying, Zach LaVine may be a pipe dream. I'm just saying, if the Warriors are trading Jimmy and Kuminga, they could open up quite a bit of money to do something pretty interesting with, and maybe take in a player that has a bad contract, but would make a lot of sense on a roster with Giannis and with Steph. Like if you have Giannis and Steph, you don't care about bad contracts. You're trying to win the title. So whether it is you get Myles Turner or Zach LaVine in this bigger idea or whatever it is, like the money that they're generating by doing it this way is significant enough that there are some really interesting possibilities that open up.
I don't think I understand where you're going with Levine. I think they could probably get somebody else, not quite as good, but maybe making half that amount.
Jeremy
Like
Grant,
what
maybe.
what about Simons with to help the Celtics save money? I I think that could be I'd rather do something like that if you're looking for. I mean, do you think that's even a good fit? I don't know if it's as good as it's not probably not as good as Levine, but there's just so much money.
What about Jeremy Grant? Like, you do need some wings on this team. Like, maybe that's the way you do this. All I'm saying is, again, just keep in mind, if the Jimmy and Giannis make dollar for dollar the exact same amount of money, so any extra money that Golden State sends out, and Kuminga makes a lot, obviously Pajemski doesn't make quite as much, but it adds up. You're opening up a pretty damn big functional trade exception that you can use to get somebody to help build out your team around Giannis, Steph, and Draymond. And for what it's worth, I might trade Draymond if I was getting Giannis, because I do not know how those guys fit together. Defensively, it would be a dream. Offensively, I don't know what Draymond does on a team with Giannis.
I would probably trade him. It just seems like they just won't. They just want to keep him for until the very end. But
They got rid of Clay.
it'd be
Just saying.
fine. It would still work. I do think they might. There are scenarios where if they do trade Draymond, they might have a higher ceiling. But seems like they'd probably keep him. So yeah, roughly an hour into Giannis. Do you want to any more on him, or should we? You want to go into
Wait.
some other around the league stuff?
We got to talk about. We have to talk about Miami, and we have to talk about. I have some Giannis adjacent trades that I want to make.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
Miami, I think, has the best offer right now. Here's why I think that. Their out year picks in 31, 32, whatever, maybe not quite as valuable as Golden State's, but they're still pretty valuable because Bam's no spring chicken. I don't know what the front office structure is going to look like, except Pat Riley is like 80. You still would have Giannis, who's going to be old by that point. So you could figure out they have that ode pick to Charlotte in 2027, which sort of complicates things. There are workarounds you could figure out, whether it's making it unprotected in 2028 so that you could trade more picks now, whether it's like there are ways you could work around that. But I think Khalil Ware is worth more than like a pick in 2026 or pick in 2027, right? Like Khalil
Yeah.
Ware's upside is such that if I'm getting picks in 30, 31, 32 either way, but Miami has the best prospect to offer, that means something to me. And plus, like, I don't think getting Tyler Hero is that essential. But again, if you do care about the selling tickets, have an all-star, blah, 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 sure, he made the all-star team last year. And maybe you could flip him in a year or something. I don't know.
I'm looking at the draft picks. So right now they can trade 22 of like the later ones. So like 2030 and 2032. That's the most obvious framework right now. Once you get to the off season, then you can do up to 4. And the reason for that is you can then do 26. And then on top of that, the odd numbered years, 29, 31, 33. 29 would be on the condition that the 27 pick, which has light protections to Charlotte, conveys in 27. The Heat have done that before, like in that Charlotte trade. They traded the 27 first to Charlotte, lottery protected, on the condition that their, I think it was lottery protected first to OKC in 25 conveys that year, which it did. So they can do up to 4. I'm trying to think of ways they can open up max picks, because I don't know, is like, as I'm looking at it, is there a simple pick swap they can do? I know we talked about it before. I may have been wrong on it. Like, you're like, if they trade 28, but then they can't trade 29. So
I have an idea.
yeah,
Let me pitch this to you.
I think they're gonna have to, like, maybe trade a player and I don't know who that'd be.
Here's my idea. You go to Charlotte and you say, instead of lottery protected in 2027, let's just make it fully unprotected in 2028. Then you could trade the Bucks 2026, 2030, and 2032, along with swaps in 27, 29, 31. As I'm saying that, the Bucks don't have picks in 27 and 29, so you'd have to find some other way to put value on those 27 and 29 swaps for the Heat. But I think that's doable.
But making it fully unprotected doesn't open up more picks. That's not the issue. The issue is that because they owe a 27, they can't trade 26 or 28. So is there a way maybe you could trade a player to just get the pick back? Because if maybe there is a way Charlotte could cooperate, because if they, if the Heat are getting Giannis, that 27 pick probably not going to amount to much. So maybe there's a way they can try to get Charlotte. Maybe there's a 3-way deal, maybe, to help them get a big man. I have an idea. Now.
What if Charlotte is the team that gets Khalil Ware? They give the Heat their pick back, but they also give them more draft capital on top of that, because the Hornets very badly need a long-term center. So maybe that's the way you do this. The Bucks don't get Ware, but like the Bucks get 3 picks from the Heat or 4 picks from the Heat plus a pick from the Hornets.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe some of these veteran bigs that we've speculated maybe Charlotte could go after, maybe the Heat can help facilitate that somehow. There are things that can be done, but I don't think, as far as trying to get the Heat to open up 4 first-round picks, it wouldn't be a simple pick swap. They could probably open up 3 right now, and we don't know how the Bucks will feel about that. At that point, maybe the Bucks would rather just make the Heat wait until the offseason. So in knowing what we know, let's say they can figure something out and they open up 3 first-round picks, plus they're trading Hero, Ware. You think that's better than the Warriors offer we just talked about?
Yeah, because I'd rather have, like, if the out-year picks are valuable for me either way, I do think it's important to get a blue chip young guy, and I think Ware could be a blue chip young guy. Like, Pajemski, Kuminga, I'm not that into those guys. Like, I'll take them, and maybe there is some upside there, but Ware is like the guy that I'd be really, really interested in. So I would rather have a deal where I got some of my value in picks, some of it in players, than a deal like Golden State's where you're getting all of your value in picks. That's just so much of a crapshoot.
I will say, I wonder if, now that Giannis is available, if the Bucks would want to get Ja Morant as part of a bigger trade. They're reportedly interested in him. They can take back a lot of money for Giannis. Giannis makes $54 million. I think they could take back up to like $70 million for him. So instead of taking back, say, Hero or Kuminga, maybe they want the guy who could, like you mentioned, sell seats or whatever. What better guy than Ja Morant, I suppose? And with Giannis there, then you could try to figure out how to put a team around him, if that's what they want to do. So maybe that's something I'm keeping an eye on, where maybe could be part of an urgency for the Bucks to get a deal done now. Maybe they want to try to get Ja in just in case another team might get him in the offseason. I don't know.
So let me ask you this too. How good do you think the Heat would be with Giannis? I think this is a worthwhile conversation because they're like a 500 or so team right now.
they would probably be a home court team in the East, and they would
So
probably. Go ahead.
no, you go first. You finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I thought
I
you were
wasn't
done.
done. I would think they should make it to the finals at various points, at least once. If they can get these two of these Jimmy led teams in the past to go to the finals, I think Spo can put something together if they have enough shooting with Giannis really driving their ceiling and going to the finals. I think they should make a finals appearance. I feel pretty strong about that. How if they can finally get over the hump and win a championship, guess it just depends who they meet.
Yeah, so at first my thought was like they wouldn't get that much better. They're not good enough to justify this. Then I actually really started to think about the team. Your starting lineup would be Davion Mitchell, Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Giannis, and Bam. That's a defensive monster, right? Like that's four really good defensive players. Norm Powell, not a good defender, but he's not like Trae Young. And then everybody in that lineup can shoot a little bit, but none of them hold the ball so much that Giannis couldn't be your point guard. The more I think about that, the more I think that team is just awesome.
I think they'll work. Like on paper, it doesn't seem all that appealing when you compare it to some of these other teams, like the idea of pairing him with Steph or pairing him with Brunson. Yeah, he doesn't have that like great number two, and maybe there's some questions about how he'd fit with Bam, but I think Spo will make it work. Like think of Giannis just like a bigger Jimmy, like he's gonna have the ball in his hands a ton, and he'd conceivably be the best player in the East in all these playoff runs. So that reason of thought of why the Bucks shouldn't trade Giannis, oh, we have him, he's the best player in the East, we can go to the finals with him, doesn't necessarily apply to them now given the situation, but you can make that case more if you're the Heat and you're thinking
And
about bringing him in.
the Heat are also so good at manufacturing cheap depth with their G League operation and with undrafted guys that like all you really need to think about is do we like our starting five? We'll figure out the rest of the team later. So
Yeah. Now maybe Drew Smith might be enough at the one to
I mean,
with the rest
I,
of the team.
I like Pella Larson. If you could keep Hawkes might have to be in the trade. Yaku Chonas, maybe he's in the trade, but maybe you keep him. Like there are a lot of guys on that team that I think would be fine as like a sixth, seventh, eighth man on the Giannis version of the team. I'd feel pretty good about them. So now that we've talked about the four Giannis teams, I want to talk a little bit about Giannis adjacent trades. What I mean by that is that if Giannis gets traded, I don't think there are any sacred cows left on the Bucks, right? Like they'd be willing to trade basically anybody.
Yeah, Turner is, but it's more so they're kind of closer to the Kings in that there's no one there other than Myles Turner that's really appealing. Like
Well, Ryan
Turner's the one
Rollins, I
guy.
think, would be.
Yeah, Turner's the guy they could probably get two firsts for. Portis, I think there'll be a lot of interest in him, but for like a lot of seconds. Rollins, maybe there's a team willing to give up a first because
I
the
have
length
it.
of that,
I have that
how
team.
cheap that contract is. We can go into liquidating the Bucks. What comes after? So who do you want to start with?
Okay.
Rollins?
Here's my idea. I'm killing like six birds with one stone here. Fred VanVleet and the lesser of Houston's two first round picks in 2027, which are the Suns and the Nets. So like those picks are both pretty good for Bobby Portis and Ryan Rollins. Aside from replacing Steven Adams with another bench big, aside from getting Houston the guard that it needs, it gets the Rockets out of the tax. This does so many things for them. And by the way, the Bucks could take Fred VanVleet, play him the first half of next season, and then flip him at the deadline. Like, I'm very proud of this one.
That's interesting. I wonder if Houston is going to resort to doing something not quite on the level of trading both Fred and Adams, but at least trading one of them. Where right now they only have 12 players on their regular rotation healthy, and a lot of these guys are injury prone. It's I think they're getting to the point where if they want to maximize this season, they're going to have to consider trading one of them. I thought about if now maybe they'd be willing to do, say, Fred and Adams and a pick maybe help the Mavs get a piece of their 29 back for Kyrie, and then they'd still have enough money to get a veteran minimum center, maybe from a third team. I am starting to think about Houston just on another note of what they might have to do now.
Well, Michael Porter Jr. too. You could give the Nets their 27 pick back and then trade Adams and Van Vliet for Michael Porter. Like maybe that's
Yeah.
something you hypothetically could do. Like I don't
Yeah.
think the Rockets are going to go that far, but I'm just saying like the Rockets are very interesting right now. You could also do a version of this without Van Vliet if you want to keep him, where it's Dorian Finney-Smith and a first for Rollins, and that gets you out of the tax. So like that's another version of this. I do think they will look for a way out of the tax at the very least,
Yeah.
because I think with Van Vliet and Adams out, it doesn't make sense to pay the tax for this year's team. You're not good enough. So I do think they'll look for a way out of the tax.
I think Houston, though, like I could see them going after Rollins, and I think they're more likely to do just trade two minimums though, bring in Rollins, figure something else out with their injured guys. Just it's just more simple that way.
You want to do Myles Turner, because I am very proud of what I came up with here.
All right.
Okay, here's what I came up with. It's going to take you a second for this to click, but just play it out with me. The Bucks trade Myles Turner and the lesser of Milwaukee and New Orleans in 2026. So Milwaukee trades Myles Turner and their own pick this year, which we assume will be like 8, 9, 10, something like that, to the Pelicans for DeJounte Murray and the better of New Orleans and Milwaukee next year. So the Pelicans get the shooting, rim protecting center that they're going to need next to Derek Queen long term. They get a pick in the 2026 draft. They're not getting their own pick back, but they're getting a pick that'll probably be like 7, 8, 9, something like that, like a lottery pick in the 2026 draft. And they get off of DeJounte Murray. But the Bucks get the right to tank back next year, with the caveat that they might get New Orleans' pick instead. So Milwaukee gets 2 bites at the lottery apple next year, essentially what the Hawks have this year with the Pelicans Bucks pick.
So this is really creative what you came up with.
I know,
for a couple
right?
reasons.
I'm so proud.
So you guys might be listening and thinking, why should the Bucks do that? DeJounte Murray, he doesn't make sense there. He's just a bad contract. And then on top of that, that 26 pick should be pretty good now that they and the Pelicans are back. That should be a good pick. I'm gonna write about this. The Bucks 26 pick really isn't gonna be that good. It's most likely gonna be in its current range, like 7. So it'll probably be like 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. They can't have the number 1 pick. The only way they could be number 2, and really like in the lottery, the top 4, is if the Hawks get the number 1 pick, which is very possible if that Pelicans pick is number 1. And then they have to jump up as well. Just a lot of unlikelihoods, a lot of luck needs to happen. That 27 pick, if the Pelicans actually were willing to give it to the Bucks, actually is like kind of dangerous, because there is some protection on it.
It's the same pick they gave up this year.
So they owe it.
The lesser. No, the
Yes.
lesser goes to Atlanta, not the better.
No, but here's the deal. The pick, the lesser of it, whatever pick it is top 4 protected. So if you're the Bucks and you think the Pelicans are going to suck next year, and then you can bottom out next year now, then there's like a very small chance that you could actually get 2 picks. You could get the Pelicans and the Bucks. I think that's how I'm interpreting it.
No,
because
wait,
it's
no.
Then the Hawks. Yeah, the Hawks. The way the Hawks get it, it's top 4 protected. Otherwise, the Hawks don't get any of it.
Oh, you're saying the Pelicans could get 2 picks then, right?
Yeah, but if the Pelicans are trading it to the Bucks, then they can and it's between Pelican. Oh no, maybe I'm confusing it.
No.
But
The Pelicans would get the way this would work. This is the way I'm interpreting this. Is the Bucks would get the better of Bucks Pelicans. The Hawks would get the lesser of Bucks Pelicans, unless the lesser of Bucks Pelicans is number 2, number 3, or number 4, in which case New Orleans would keep it. That's the way I'm interpreting this.
27. New Orleans received the most favorable of its own, and Milwaukee and Atlanta will receive the least favorable of the 2 protections, 1 through 4. If it falls within the protected range, then it's not conveyable. So I'm interpreting it as right now the Pelicans, there's like a slight chance that they have the
Yes.
Bucks and the Pelicans pick if both are
Slight
top four.
chance. Yes.
Which is so
There
that's why I'm saying if the Bucks get that pick, they can control their fate, and then it's all about New Orleans just being bad again.
right. Well, the real advantage to Milwaukee is like your plan if you're Milwaukee is you are tanking, right? But in addition to the lottery balls you get yourself, you also get whatever lottery balls New Orleans have, which is like what the Hawks have this year between the Pelicans and the Bucks. That's what I'm saying. Like you're basically setting up a scenario where you could have like if the Pelicans are the 6th or 7th worst team next year, as we probably think they will be, and you're in the bottom 3, a chance where you have like a 20, 21, 22% chance at the number 1 pick and like maybe a 60 or 70% chance at top 4.
Yeah. No, that'd be a really brilliant trade if the Bucks can pull that off.
I am very proud of that one. That's, I think, my best fake trade on this podcast all year. And by the way, Myles Turner, exactly what New Orleans needs too.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a trade that literally I don't think anyone else will have come up with. So, no, great job on that
Victory
one.
lap. All right. Want to go through the more boring Myles Turner trades, or do you have other stuff you want to hit?
I was going to list teams, but you can go ahead.
My second favorite is Toronto. The idea here would be Jakob Poeltl, Ochai Agbaji, and 2 first-round picks from the Raptors. Because for Toronto, one of these picks is for Turner, and the other is for taking on Poeltl. The Bucks, if they're going to be bad the next few years anyway, having the bad Poeltl contract is just whatever. You got to look at Agbaji, or maybe you take Grady Dick instead if there's somebody else you like. But the Raptors, Myles Turner is the sort of center they need too, because Scotty Barnes obviously not a great shooter. They're not a good shooting team. You get Myles Turner, that helps alleviate some of your spacing issues.
Yeah, I think the Raptors, if they're gonna do that, I feel like they swing a little higher, like Sabonis, maybe, or maybe not necessarily a center, maybe another one of the best players available. Like if it's like a Jaren Jackson or Trey Murphy, and they probably have to include yet another pick, but I don't know if they'd do that 2 first to go from Poeltl to Turner. Just it seems like a lot of draft pick equity to make that switch.
Could you do that with players then, like 1 pick and then Grady Dick and Jacoby Walter or something?
Maybe, yeah, that gets a little closer. Depends what the
Boston
those guys. Bucks can afford to take chances on those guys now.
Boston is the other kind of obvious one. They need a shooting center. Problem is their 2026 pick is just not going to be that good. It's going to be somewhere in the mid-20s. Anthony Simons can be the matching money, but like really, if I were the Bucks, I would say like we'll do Anthony Simons in your 2031 pick.
Just the tax issue, if they're willing to just ignore that. But otherwise, I think the value's there.
Yeah. Well, that also could, if you swap Simons for Turner, that would also get you to a point where if you dumped Sam Hauser, you could duck the tax. I don't think they want to dump Sam Hauser. Anytime I bring it up, Celtics fans get really mad at me, but that would save you a little bit of money.
I think more so the issue if they have Turner at $25 million next year with Tatum, with Brown, and White making as much as they do, you might not be able to deduct the tax next year. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's part of that too.
But it gets a little, it gets a little tricky. You definitely need to move Hauser by then. Maybe they could make it work. It's tricky.
What other Turner teams do you have?
I was thinking about Portland. I could see them wanting to get just another center to supplement, a different type of center to supplement Klingon. If they can turn Grant in a pick into Turner, I wonder if that's something they'd be interested in. You save a lot of money that way too. Do you think that's something that could make some sense?
My read is that I think they don't want to invest really heavily in another big because they're really into Yang Hansun, however you pronounce it. I'm not saying like they wouldn't get any big. Like I've thrown Jaren Jackson out there for Portland, but Jaren Jackson would play power forward or could play power forward. Turner really can't. So, or I don't know if I want to say he can't, but it's not really a defensive fit. So Yeah, I see what you're getting at, but I think they're so organizationally invested in Klingon and in Yang that they're not gonna go that hard for another center.
The other two I have, Atlanta.
Yeah,
Without
Atlanta makes
trading
sense.
without trading a super valuable pick, uh you get off Porzingis, his expiring contract. May I give up a pick, maybe just the worst 26 pick you have. Maybe got to throw in another future pick and then bring in Myles Turner. Makes a little bit less, but he's got team control. A lot of overlap with Porzingis, but a lot healthier. Always usually stays on the
Yeah.
court. I can't remember Turner really having injury problems recently.
Yep. Well, the other thing
Yeah.
is, I think Milwaukee would like the idea of Porzingis' matching salary because we've talked about the idea of re-signing him on a team-friendly deal. You might be able to do that and then flip him later if you can string together some healthy years. So that's another consideration.
And then I brought it up before. Indiana? Is there maybe a way that
I think there's a lot
there
of
could be
bad
something
blood
done?
there.
Yeah, probably some.
A lot of bad
But
blood.
but if you're Indiana and let's say the Bucks have
What's the
some
money?
interest.
Like what's the matching money?
So if we're talking right now, we're talking like maybe Matherin and Walker. I think the Bucks that could make a lot of sense for the Bucks to bring on those guys now. Maybe you can get a pick on top of that, not the lottery pick. I just don't see the Pacers. It feels like most likely the Pacers are more likely to get a guard or a wing with that lottery pick, based on how like some of
Mhm.
the big board is sort of shaken out right now. So if they can't get a Zubats or a Okongwu, like a Daniel Gafford, a player in that price range, I could see them revisiting. Maybe they want to bring Turner back.
Yeah, I mean, the trade you proposed would push Indiana into the tax this year, which we know is just an absolute non-starter. So you might have to put in Isaiah
Yeah,
Jackson, or maybe you don't feel like you can afford Obi Toppin long term if you're bringing back Turner. I don't know. You'd have to figure something out. I'm more amenable to this than I was a month ago. Ironically, like I do think the Turner contract is kind of iffy. It's not great. He does not had a very good year. Um, I think what I've realized over the last few weeks, month, is there is a lot more center demand than center supply right now, especially when it comes to guys who shoot, because there are so many teams that like so badly need a center who can make threes that I think Turner is more valuable than maybe I thought. So I think Indiana would be open minded about it. I think you'd have to figure out the money, but I think it's pretty doable. And if they were willing to bury the hatchet, we know the fit works.
yeah. The way I look at it is, I don't think the Buck system is really doing Turner any favors. I would argue that the Turner we saw last year is probably worth more than what Turner's making now. So even if he doesn't, even if he did drop off a little bit, I think where he's making right now makes a lot of sense on the Pacers and probably makes some sense on some other teams. And his contract's still going to be better than a lot of what these other centers are set to get. Like Jared Allen's going to be making $30 million a year. We talked about Pirtle; he's going to be making $30 million a year.
Ugh.
Technically speaking, Turner's kind of on a bargain. So I'm
I
more optimistic that he will be better and he'll thrive in a better situation.
bargain is a stretch, but you've convinced me that it's reasonable. The last thing I want
Yeah.
to say about the Bucks is I'm kind of amazed that Doc Rivers is still the coach. Like at no point as they were falling apart and trying to salvage the Giannis season, because there was reporting today, I think this was from Stein and Fisher, that as recently as Monday, they were still looking for win now trades. They never thought to make a coaching change. That never occurred to them. But I guess they don't want to, because they already had to pay out Budenholzer after firing him, and they had to pay out Adrian Griffin after paying him. They might just say, like, we can't afford to pay another coach not to coach for us. So Doc will be finishing out his contract or resigning.
I have some thoughts about this. I've thought at the past few weeks, months, why is Doc still coaching the team? And I see it all over Buck's Twitter. Why is this guy still coaching my team? Yeah, the natural response when your team's underperforming like this and there's a lot of things that are not working is fire the coach. If you are a Bucks fan and you want him fired, don't you want him to That's kind of the easy way out, right? Because then he's getting paid to not coach this season. If you are like on that level where you want Doc fired, don't you want him to actually see out this miserable season and earn your money?
Well, the other part of this
I
too,
think Ryan. I feel like this is if you want Doc fired, I think you should have prefer he stick around until the season's over at least.
well, maybe what the Bucks are thinking is we're going to be so miserable without Giannis. It's going to be so hopeless that Doc will quit and we won't have to pay him because like Doc Rivers he left Boston to avoid a rebuild, has not coached a young team. Like every team he's coached since Boston has been a team that was trying to win now. Like maybe Doc Rivers would rather just go back to the golf course next year than make $10 million to coach the Bucks. Like maybe that's what Milwaukee's hoping for.
Doc Rivers has coached every single year in his career since 1999. He's never taken time off. Every time he's left the job or gotten fired, he's immediately got another job. The only break
he did 1 year on ESPN.
No, that wasn't a year. That was like a couple months. He got fired by Philly. He was with ESPN for like half the season, and then the Bucks brought him in. He did not take a year off.
He did a year with Al Michaels in 2004. I'm saying way back when he got fired by Orlando.
Oh,
before he got the Boston job. Yes.
Hold on, let me check. I want to double check.
Yes, he did.
This.
Go back and watch the Derek Fisher 0.4 seconds.
He coached that year.
He coached that year. They just hired him for the playoffs.
He coached 11 games.
Oh, they fired him in the
so we're both right. We're both right.
Yeah.
But like he's never. I feel like he's never taken like enough time off. Where a lot of coaches, you could see improvements from coaches that take like 1 or 2 years off, not just to like reset, but also observe, see what like the new trends and new schemes are. He's never really done that, and that's why. That's my theory on why maybe he hasn't really like evolved since almost 20 years ago. Like, he has a little bit, but you would think an experienced coach this like for being in the league this long would be one of the best coaches in the league, and he isn't.
Do you think he gets another head coaching job after this? Like, do you think his politicking skills are that great that he can con some other team into like a 4-year, $50 million contract?
Do you want to go find the teams?
Well,
who are the teams?
What I think the only chance he has would have to be another situation like the Bucks, where they fire somebody in the middle of a season and they don't want to hire a first-time coach. They're just like, yeah, Doc Rivers, he's a steady hand. Our veterans will respect him. Sure.
Sacramento, they have had in recent years, like Alvin Gentry coach recently. They've had some coaches that you would have thought were like, would have been retired by now. They're still sticking around. Maybe that's maybe in the same sense, if they want to have someone that's like, not that a coach is bringing fans to the seats, but just someone, a name to bring some sort of relevancy, or maybe the Kings. I don't know who else.
Okay, so the Kings have now had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They've had 14 coaches this century. Not one of them was an NBA champion when the Kings hired them. Michael Malone went on to win a championship. George Karl made the finals. Mike Brown made the finals with other teams. Rick Adelman made the finals with other teams. So the Kings might look at this as a way to be like, look at us making a credible hire. We're bringing in a champion, a proven winner.
That's exactly, you worded my thoughts much. You communicated my thoughts much better than I did.
Yeah, I hope not. But I think we're ready for the end of the road with Doc. My real question is, will he get another TV job after this, or has ESPN been so burned by him leaving in the middle of the season?
Well, I mean, I could see them bringing him back because wasn't the original plan going to be Breen, Doc, and Burke?
I think.
And now Burke's not going to do it. So I think like it's still kind of in flux. I'm sure they'd bring him back. I'm sure when he got the job, there was some understanding. Hey, if I get a coaching job, I'm leaving. I'm sure that's kind of a thing with a lot of the former players or former coaches they bring in. It happened. Even Redick, that was more unexpected because he didn't have the experience, but it happened. So I don't think they're one to like. It's not like an NBA team or players. It's different. I think he could come back.
Protect Tim Legler. Protect Tim Legler. Like I'm good, Doc. Like I'm happy with Legler. Let's leave it be.
All right. Sam, should we put an end to this for the day?
Yes. Unless you have anything else you want to hit, but I think I'm good on my end.
I think we're good. We went a lot longer than I anticipated. So there are other small things we could get into. We'll save them for another time. And we'll see. Now that we're on trade deadline week, we're going to be a lot more flexible. If there's any breaking news, we'll react to them. Or if we just have the time, maybe we'll just hop on, go live again. So just be on the lookout. We are going to try to be active this week. Everyone, thank you for joining. A big crowd on YouTube, Twitter. This is great stuff. I'm glad to see you all supporting the show. Subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcast if you're new. Subscribe to my Substack, a lot of salary cap analysis there. Follow Sam on Twitter. You could see his handle there. You could follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. It's the best time of year to follow us. We're going to have a lot of instant analysis when transactions happen. So make sure you're following both of us there as well. Sam, anything you want to plug?
Read CBS Sports. I write a lot. I'm writing a lot this week. I'm writing a lot next week. Everything I write will be there.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining this one, and we'll see you soon.